Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get started today. Welcome to this week's CybHER Conversation brought to you by Peraton. We are so excited to have you here. As many of you know, CybHER is a program out of Dakota State University in Madison, South Dakota. My name is Katie Shuck, and I am the CybHER Chief of Strategy. We also have with us Kanthi Narakonda, who is the CybHER Chief of Operations, and Dr. Pam Rowland, who is one of CybHER's co-founders, along with Dr. Ashley Podorotsky, who's unable to join us today. But we are so excited for you to join us. CybHER is a program that works to empower, motivate, and educate girls in cybersecurity. Now, before I introduce this week's speaker, I do want to remind you that if you have any questions at all at any point during the conversation, you can ask those via the Q&A that you will find at the bottom of your screen. But without further ado, I am very excited to introduce to you Lisa McKee, who is a privacy engineer with Protiviti. And Lisa is one of the leading experts in privacy, working with assessments and audits, compliance, so many different areas. And Lisa truly is a privacy expert. So we are thrilled to have you with us. And Lisa, I'm going to hand the program over to you.
Great. Thank you, Katie and Pam and Kanthi. I'm excited to be here, and I appreciate the time and all of the attendees for taking time out of your busy day to listen to this. So thank you. A little bit about my background. So I have 20 years experience in security and privacy. Back when I was going to school, privacy wasn't a topic, and audit and some of the other roles that I've done. I went to school as a computer programmer. I have 5 degrees across various different things. So I started off as a computer programmer, did that for a couple of years, and learned very quickly that programming is not my thing. Sitting behind a desk, hacking out code, I get lost trying to find the missing comma or the missing period, and I'm just not good at that. So I quickly learned that I needed something else that fit me better. And what I transitioned to was business analyst, project management, QA tester. I was much better at breaking code than I was at writing code and making it work. So that's what I then transitioned into. I've rebuilt and redesigned websites for companies. I write requirements as a business analyst, set project plans as a project manager. So the first half of my career has been all things related to software development and database management and project management and things like that. I was in a role where I had the CISO come to me and said, we have an opportunity for somebody to pick up security and privacy. Are you interested? And at the time it was around PCI compliance. And I was like, don't really know what PCI is, but sure, I'll take it on. I always love a good challenge. And so I've been doing security and privacy in PCI since 2009. I went back to school from my associate's degree to get a bachelor's degrees. I have bachelor's degrees in communications and management information systems. And then I went back to school again from there and got a master's degree in strategic leadership, and I'm currently working on a PhD program in cybersecurity and data privacy through DSU. So education is really important to me. I feel it's important with technology to stay up on new skills. I'm constantly reading articles, learning what I can to help my clients and help others around me and contribute to the profession. In addition, once I got into security, what I did was I was managing security programs. I built security programs at companies that didn't have one, working across all the different functions within an organization. So frontline, security, marketing, HR, to make sure that security and privacy is embedded into all aspects of an organization. So I've done just about most things when it comes to the security aspect, including IT audit and governance, risk management, I've been an internal auditor. I've been an external auditor. Some of the things I do today to contribute to the profession is I help write industry standards. I'm excited to say I'm a member of the Accredited Standards Committee X9 and help contribute and write industry standards that companies use when they're building out their programs or looking for what's that best in class to write standards and policies within their internal organizations. I've also written exam certification questions for the IAPP CIPT program, ISACA's certification for their CISA, which is the audit certification. So it's very important to me to stay connected with the profession, not just do this on the side, but I live and breathe this every day, and I have for 20 years, which makes it helpful when you're going in and having conversations. And as a consultant, so I do a lot of privacy work, as Katie said, is it privacy engineering, privacy audit, privacy program management, you name it. I take about just anything and put a flavor of privacy to that. So vendor risk management and incident response and DR and BCP, things that didn't exist, 20 years ago. We've had privacy regulations for years and years, but it isn't until, about 2018 when the European regulation for privacy came to be that privacy became a hot topic. So now that's what I help companies with, is making sure that their privacy notices and privacy policies on their websites are current and in simple, plain English that people understand, and that they're able to respond to data subject access requests. When you as an individual say, I want to know what information you have on me, I want to exercise my privacy rights, companies have to respond to that. So some of the things that I do is help make sure that they have those documented policies and procedures in place, the systems and applications to support that as well. So it's super exciting that I've been able, I didn't know it 20 years ago. I walked into a counselor's office and just said, what's the job going to be like? Because I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do in college, right? I tried a lot of different things and they said technology, be a programmer. So being on the cutting edge of, going from a programmer to going to, project management and security and things like that, I've always been just accidentally on that cutting edge of what's the next thing. And now I'm in privacy. I've been doing privacy for 10 years, but people and organizations just started talking about it in 2018. So it's fun, right? I find it exciting and fascinating to be able to go in and help companies have those conversations of things that they didn't know about. And some of the things that I'm working on at DSU as part of my research and dissertation is writing industry standards, updating industry standards on privacy impact assessments. They haven't been refreshed. Those industry standards are 10 years old. So companies and professionals are looking for, the updates to what should I be doing. So it's nice to feel relevant. It's nice to feel that you're providing value when you're helping contribute to these leading technologies and leading standards that companies are looking for right now because they just don't exist. So those are the things that I do as far as my profession, as part of my job, kind of how I got to where I'm at. So some of the things I do on a daily basis, right? What does a day look like for me? It varies based on projects that I'm working on. I'm a consultant. So I go in and I help companies with security and privacy solutions. That could be anything from specific things like NIST or ISO or PCI, privacy. It could also be doing audits to those standards and those regulations to assess their networks, all aspects of their business. I also do a lot of speaking engagements. I'm super excited that I've been accepted to speak at RSA in May of this year. If you're not familiar, it's kind of the the platform to be on for security professionals. So I'm super excited to be doing that. And I share a lot of this information with others. I didn't have a mentor when I was going through this 20 years ago. I kind of just floundered around and landed where I landed. So I enjoy sharing my story with others. And then also I, in addition to things like this, I do speaking engagements and then just training and outreach, and mentor other women in security and privacy through professional associations as well. So as Katie said in the beginning, it truly is something that I live and breathe every day, and do what I can to give back to others and really shape what this industry looks like and drive what the new leading technologies and standards that will be coming out. So Katie, I don't know if there's any questions that have come up in the chat, or Canthi, if you have any.
Actually, I do. We have many, many questions for you. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. Like you said, privacy has always been a concern, but it's only just now like coming onto the scene. Like everybody's talking about it, everybody's focused on it. So what should the young people that are watching this right now know about privacy?
Sure, that's a great question. So I would start with understanding, what are your rights? Where do you live? And what does that mean? Privacy is not equal, right? Security is security, it's always the same. Encryption is encryption, it's not going to change. But privacy isn't there yet. And depending on where you live, as far as what country, if you're international, or if you're within the United States, different states have their own different rules and regulations on how they define what is privacy and what are your rights. And California has been on the leading edge of that. And people in California, their rights are important. They have a lot more rights than where I reside, which is in Nebraska, or even DSU, which is in South Dakota. We don't have that yet in the Midwest. So I would say start with understanding what the rules and regs are of where you live and what are your rights within that. So if you're in California, you have the right to go to a company to say, I created a profile on that site, maybe for shopping or professional reasons or whatever. I don't want it there anymore, and I want you to delete that information. You may have deleted your profile from the public view, but that company then has an obligation to delete it from back-end systems and other things where it's within the compounds of the law. So that's what I would share, is just know what your rights are, know where you're putting data, and then do what you can also to protect your persona online. Right? There's so much with data being scraped online. There's so much information that's being shared that you don't know about. So Google yourself, or OSINT, right? Open source intelligence. See where your data is. Make sure that it's not in places that you don't expect it to be. Sign up for registries like Credit Karma has a free registry that you can sign up for, and they'll send you notifications if your data's been breached. Things like that are also good, because you know what you know, but then there's also those unknowns, right? You don't know everything. So those are places that I would start with, is knowing where your information is and what your rights are.
That was perfect. I don't know if you watched this. There's this documentary called The Great Hack about the Cambridge Analytica thing, and the person who was attempting to get his data removed from like everywhere, like his private or personal data. And I was stunned, because I knew that companies are collecting data, but why won't they take it off when we ask them? Has become like a main concern, I want to say. And it does take a long time. Or when the documentary came out, apparently it took him a long time to get the companies to pull his data. And so, yeah, that's a very
And to your point, Kathy, that I've seen that documentary. It's fantastic. If people, attendees haven't seen that yet, I would definitely recommend going and watching that. It is a huge eye opener to your privacy and your rights. And you're right. You just watch that and you go, wow, people really did that with my information, and how that even affected the election back in 2016, right? I learned a lot just from watching it, and I wrote research papers on it. And the one thing to know with that is it goes back to what I stated in your first question, is knowing your rights. The reason why that gentleman struggled to get his information removed is because he was a US citizen filing suit overseas. If you're an overseas, say you were in the EU and you were, made that an argument and filed that suit in the EU, the outcome would have been entirely different because you have rights in the EU. We don't have those same rights in the US, nor does the EU necessarily recognize us as US citizens. You have that whole international thing that played a huge impact in that. So it goes back to what I was saying with know your rights, know where your data is, because you're right. That's a great example of it can get out of hands really quickly.
Definitely. So, I mean, that's so right. With the recent thing going on between WhatsApp and Apple creating labels on what they're collecting, I don't understand why they would need all that data, like purchase history and all of that. But you're right. You need some sense of being able to control your data that's available out there.
Yeah, and to that, what I've been trying to do is there's this concept of privacy by design, and it has to do with developing software that also fits privacy rights and regulations. The old mantra as a developer, right? The old mantra was collect everything. I don't know what I'll need tomorrow. I don't know what I'll need in 5 years, but if I build it now, it's cheaper to build it now than to go back and say, oh, I needed another element, or in 5 years, I want to add something else. So that's the mindset that we're trying to change with software development, change with technologists, and just change that culture across organizations to say that mantra of, that old mindset of I'm going to collect everything doesn't work now with these new privacy rights, and to your point, you have to notify individuals and post privacy notices of what you are collecting, not necessarily down to the field element level, but at least categories, right? I'm collecting education information, or I'm collecting personal information, protected information, different categories, and they must tell you in their privacy notices what that is. So that old idea of we'll just collect everything, I don't know what I have, I may have your social security number, I may not, then you get this data breach alert that says, oh great, your data was breached, and you're like, I didn't even know they had it, right? So the privacy laws are trying to help with that. Unfortunately, you're kind of behind the 8 ball in some cases, right? Behind the curve, because companies can't just flip on a dime like that. The legislation gets passed right away, but then companies are sitting there going, I need time to adjust. I need time to take that out or justify why I'm still collecting that. So it definitely is changing the conversations a lot with when you add privacy to that.
I'm so glad it is, because we need it. Privacy by design is something wonderful. We had Dr. Kavukian on as a guest in December, and she spoke about privacy by design. And, the more we talk about privacy, the more we have conversations about privacy, it becomes really obvious. Companies need to give you the option of what you want to share, not taking everything by default and then deciding for themselves if this is useful or not. It's just so. We have other questions from our audience. So you work as a senior manager of security and privacy solutions.
I do.
So what kind of projects do you work on?
Yeah, so some of the things that we work on is helping companies with these new regulations and laws. So I've helped companies implement privacy programs to meet California's regulation, CCPA, or the EU regulation under GDPR. I've helped companies evaluate their SDLC to incorporate privacy by design into their software development lifecycle and privacy across the organization. So I need to get requirements sign off. I need to get sign off from the business and marketing and all these other things. I also, you made a comment about, being able to change my mind with consent. So that's another thing I've done projects on is helping companies make sure that they're following the rules. Do they have explicit consent? And then if you want to change your mind, are they giving you that option? So we work with companies on what does that look like and how can they be compliant and, not have just the old, we'll collect everything, but more the privacy as the default, which is what Dr. Kevorkian talks about in privacy by design, and making sure that we're really protecting the rights and freedoms of individuals. So we'll help with designs of that. We also will go in and work with organizations on vendor management solutions and other security and privacy solutions to make sure that they know where they're sharing data. So when you deal with third parties, that then starts to get really messy because now I've given my information to a third party. Where are they sharing it, right? Are they giving, did they tell me where they're sharing it? Is it part of their privacy notice? Is that information shared securely? Is access restricted? So looking at it from that lens of the company that you made that transaction with or gave that information initially to, ensuring that everyone downstream also has the same right to that information and that it's shared, with mindfulness and not just freely given. And then also making sure that you have the ability to change your mind. And when you do change your mind, that trickles down as well. So those are some of the types of projects that I've worked on. The nice thing with security consulting and privacy is no two projects are the same. I can do audits for multiple companies, but depending on the complexity of their organization, even just depending on the type of business they are, whether it's healthcare or medical or education or social media platforms, right? The solution is going to be different because they have different information they collect, different levels of complexity across the organization. So that's the exciting thing about being a consultant that I enjoy is that every project is different. It has its own challenges as well, right? It doesn't make it easy because nothing is just, same old, same old. You got to, think outside the box sometimes, but it definitely keeps you on your toes.
So you've worked with US and international data privacy laws, vendor management, software development, IT audits and compliances, and PCI and risk and governance. So they're all different, but somehow all interconnected. So is there one aspect or is there one area that's your favorite to work on? Or
I've enjoyed the privacy part probably the most. You're right; they are all different, but they all kind of layer on each other. And I didn't know at the time I went to school and got an associate's degree in programming that 20 years from then, this is where I would be. Like, you don't plan for that; it just happens. And back then, they didn't have these, this area or even audit. Right? A lot of the things I've done, they don't have classes in that, so it's been super exciting. But I would say privacy has been my wheelhouse lately. I've obtained some of the new certifications that ISACA offers in it, which it's been exciting to see. It's on the top preferred list of certifications for 2021, which is exciting. It's kind of how you feel relevant, right? If you're checking those top industry, certs, whether you have the certs or not, at least seeing that, cloud's on the list or PM project management's on the list, it kind of helps validate that I'm doing something that's still meaningful and needed in the industry. And the nice thing with privacy, and this is what I try to do, is you can layer privacy onto any of those things that you just said, right? Security stands alone. You can have security by itself, but you cannot have privacy by itself without security. So it's nice because you take DR and BCP, and now let's look at the privacy side of that, right? How am I collecting data in a forensics investigation? And am I still protecting the rights and freedoms of individuals? Or you look at vendor management, and now you have to get down to how's data shared with that vendor. And again, am I protecting the rights and freedoms? If that individual says, don't share my data, am I making sure that I'm following that? So it's kind of nice. It's nice in that privacy is such a broad thing that you literally can layer it on any of those security domains, and it's a new thing again, right? It's security and privacy with something. So I've really enjoyed the privacy side.
Awesome. Yeah, they go together. Privacy and security go together. They're not two different things anymore. They're both the same. They go together. So true. So before COVID, then, because of your job, did you get to travel a lot to different companies, countries even, maybe?
I have, yes. So COVID's kind of driving me nuts. Before COVID, so March 13th, which coincidentally was a Friday the 13th in 2020, I usually travel every week, either to the office, which our office is down in Kansas City, which is about 4 hours from my home, or I'm traveling to clients or other offices to work with colleagues out of other offices. So it kind of was an abrupt halt to be gone every week for at least a couple of days to hardly ever leaving my house. My excitement is going to campus one day a week so I can at least, see students, which, mingle and share stories on campus. So that's kind of sad. That's the highlight of my day. But, I love school, so it's okay. But I do. And I've been fortunate enough as a consultant, it's the best way to see the world. So I've seen almost all of the states besides Hawaii. I've had trips scheduled there a couple of times. COVID's put a wrinkle in that. So that's on my bucket list. But I've also then got to travel internationally. I've been to the Dominican, I've been to Ireland. So it's so neat and fascinating when we talk about security and privacy here in the United States compared to other countries. So if you take the EU region, for example, they're not allowed to do background checks up there. So when you're auditing, isn't that interesting? When you're auditing companies in different regions, you really have to also be very mindful of local laws and local customs. Auditing a data center in Ireland or the Dominican Republic is entirely different than auditing a data center here in the US, because in the US, we don't really have privacy rights. There's cameras everywhere. There's logbooks everywhere. You can't do anything anymore without it being on video somewhere. Even on the street, somebody's probably recording it, right? It's not that way when you go to other regions, and especially those regions where privacy is so important to them, like the EU. So yes, travel has been exciting.
Awesome. So you have, or you are a member of the Accredited Standards Committee X9. Could you tell us a little bit about what X9 does and how it works?
Sure. So X9 is accredited by ANSI. So we help write industry standards for financial services industry. So standards on PKI, public key encryption infrastructure, encryption. I'm doing some stuff on privacy, security, you name it. Just about any of those standards or security areas, payment cards, protecting information. X9, we write those industry standards for the whole financial services industry. So when companies say, I need to follow industry standard within the United States, they're generally following those X9 standards. And as a member of that, I get to provide my input of here's what, what's best in class. Here's what companies should be doing, right? And I say should because they don't always do the shoulds. But we help write those. And then we can also shape what it's supposed to be as we look to the future. So one of the things that I'm working with them on right now is updating their privacy assessment standard. And then we also work very closely with ISO, which is the International Standards Organization. And sometimes our standards will then work and fit in with those ISO standards or be adopted by ISO. So not only are you impacting the US market, but you're also impacting the international market as well. So it's neat to have exposure, globally.
That is awesome. And it ties in with what you work with, with different privacies or privacy laws in different areas. It ties into that. So our last question to you, what advice would you give to the audience, the young people that are watching this session right now?
Yeah, I would say do something that you're passionate about. I love my job. I love what I do. It's not what I thought I would be doing 20 years ago when I started off going to school as a developer. But do something that makes you happy. You don't want a job where you get up every day and you're like, oh, I have to go to that job that I don't like. Like, I don't have those days. I get stressed out because work is hard, right? That doesn't go away. But find what makes you passionate and find what makes you happy and be willing to change, right? My role has changed so much over my career of 20 years that I'm doing things that didn't exist back when I went to school. So just keep in mind of, be relevant and constantly keep learning, read articles, stay up to date with what's changing if you're in technology, security, privacy, because it changes so much that what you read yesterday might be outdated or refreshed, in a couple months or even a year. So those are some of the pieces of advice that I would give others that I didn't know about when I was going to school and getting started.
That's wonderful advice for everybody and I especially love that you said be willing to change. That is such an important thing, I think, especially as our technology is changing too. Well, I am going to launch a quick poll for everybody to fill out if you can. It just helps us know a little bit more about how this program or who we're reaching and how it's helping you. I also want to remind you to join us next week as we have Carrie Roberts, who is a mechanical engineer turned developer turned pen tester turned red teamer turned finally blue teamer. So she's got a storied life and career that you won't want to miss out on hearing. Also, please follow us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, where as of this Friday, this video should be posted. And you can also view all of our previously recorded conversations that you're unable to attend in person. We do hope you are able to attend in person, and you can find our upcoming conversations on our website, as well as all information about CybHER and the upcoming programs that we have on cybher.org. So thank you, Lisa, so much for all your words, for your history and the career that you've shared with us. And we wish you all a good night.